time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
You want some soup?
Don't you agree?
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and we have Blake and Reed back with us for another chat about this week's, or this past Friday's Mandalorian episode. How's it going, you guys?
Hey, man.
Hello, brother.
Doing pretty good. Glad to be here. Let's get into this new exciting episode.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, and Reed, you mentioned that you were looking forward to this one because, of course, you've been watching Clone Wars now, right?
Yeah, I still have to watch the chronologically the movie or whatever.
Oh, okay. So you've kind of just started doing the whole.
Yeah, I
whole
just
show.
started watched the 2 episodes, and I haven't had a chance to watch the other movie yet.
2 episodes, so you got a ways to go.
Yeah, I got a bit of a ways there.
Another 400 and you'll be there.
Yeah, so far so good.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, so you've started the journey, whereas a lot of people haven't actually seen the show. And that's definitely apparent to me and stuff. So we're gonna do the best we can to try and, I guess, fill in the gaps for anybody out there. So Reed, you represent anybody out there who has not currently seen any of the animated shows. So if you got a question, throw it out there because because it might actually just go over my head to not acknowledge something. So
I think just to start out, then I kind of just want, if you can, you guys to fill in the time frame for me. So we talked about Ahsoka Tano before, how she kind of becomes the focus of the Clone Wars series and stuff like that, or she kind of ends up being the main character. I think you've mentioned. So we obviously. Where has she been? That's kind of my first question.
Yeah, so after she becomes Anakin's Padawan, she has a whole thing through the Clone Wars, and then by the end of the Clone Wars, she actually leaves the Jedi Order and decides to pursue kind of a career on her own, trying to figure herself out. And she realizes she can help people with her abilities and with the Force, right? And in a final act at the end of the Clone Wars, she comes back to help the Jedi kind of take back Mandalore, and that's where she kind of meets Bo-Katan and stuff in that whole finale. And she helps the Jedi Order arrest Maul and everything. Of course, that all doesn't work out. Maul gets away, and Ahsoka survives in the Jedi Purge, and manages to make her way, off elsewhere. And then years later, she pops up in Star Wars Rebels. By the way, there's a book called Ahsoka, which takes place after Episode 3, and it's definitely worth reading. And then in Star Wars Rebels, she pops up. She's been operating under the codename Fulcrum, and she's been basically a rebel informant for Captain Syndulla and the crew of the Ghost, which is the main cast of Star Wars Rebels. So she pops up here and there in that show, and then she eventually decides throughout season 2 to, I guess, stick with her new friends, and she helps a Jedi in that show, Kanan Jarrus, an old Padawan who also survived the Purge. He's taken on an apprentice called Ezra Bridger, like a kid, and he's been training him. And so she's kind of acting as a mentor to Kanan and Ezra, but she also kind of refrains from teaching him the ways of the Jedi because she self-proclaims not to be a Jedi anymore. So there's that whole thing. And then anyway, at the end of season 2 or whatever it is, she actually fights Darth Vader and stuff. There's a whole big spiel at the very end of season 2, which is amazing, and it involves Maul and the Inquisitors and Darth Vader and Kanan and Ezra and Ahsoka and like all these people. And Ahsoka ends up fighting Vader, and that's the moment where it's kind of confirmed to her that Vader is Anakin Skywalker. And so in a last attempt to save kind of Ezra and Kanan's life, she actually pushes them out of the way, and there's like this temple that they're in, which is closing and all that stuff. And anyway, she's in the middle of the fight, and it looks as if her and Vader are actually going to die or whatever, because this whole thing's about to blow. And then season 2 kind of ends, and we assume that she dies, but there's a little glimpse of her kind of walking down this hallway, and that it's like she may or may not be alive, sort of thing. Years later, I think it's like 2 years later worth of time, we end up kind of discovering that Ezra finds a way into this place called the World Between Worlds, which he actually reaches into a portal and grabs her in that moment and pulls her into this world between worlds. So she actually escapes this death. And then she and Ezra have a bit of a word in there and realize this place is kind of like what connects everything together without outside of time and whatnot. And then she ends up finding a portal back to her time, which she goes back into the cave or whatever. And so she does survive her fight with Vader with all that knowledge, and goes on this like spiritual journey in this cave of whatever. And then all of a sudden she pops up at the very end of Rebels, which has a flash forward scene, which is, mind you, according to Dave Filoni, not confirmed to be 4 or 5, whatever amount of years after that show. He alludes to the fact more recently, and I'll get into this later, he's alluded to the fact that that scene at the very end of season 4 Star Wars Rebels doesn't necessarily have like a time frame as to when it takes place just yet. So it's very likely that this appearance of Ahsoka in The Mandalorian takes place before that. But she does pop up at the end of Rebels, and she and Sabine go off looking for Ezra together because at the very end of the show, Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn go missing together, which they both launch into hyperspace, and there's a whole thing around the fact that Ezra and Thrawn are fighting each other, and then they go into hyperspace together, and nobody's kind of seen or heard from them, which explains their disappearance from the original trilogy. The whole spiritual journey thing in the cave and to where Ahsoka's been, that's still kind of untold, but that explains why she's not around in those films either. So now all of a sudden all these characters are popping back into the live action kind of narrative, and now we have name drops like Thrawn, and now we've got Ahsoka back in live action. Now is it likely that we'll get an Ezra in live action? Like, it's very possible at this point for sure. So that's about the most recap that I can do as far as quickly summarizing what happens with Ahsoka and her journey and all that. But you got the full story, you just got to watch the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. But it is worth noting that there was a question recently posed by some reporter out there asking if this appearance of Ahsoka takes place before or after her appearance in that flash forward scene in the end of Star Wars Rebels. So this is how Dave responds. And he says, that's not necessarily chronological. I think the thing that, actually, I'll do this in the Dave voice. No, that's not necessarily chronological. I think the thing that people most not understand is what they get into a linear fashion. But as I learned as a kid, nothing at Star Wars really works in a linear fashion. You do episode 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3. So in the vein of that history, when you look at the epilogue of Rebels, you don't really know how much time has passed. So it's possible that the story I'm telling in The Mandalorian actually takes place prior to that. Possible. I'm saying it's possible. So anyway, so that's it.
Wow.
That's pretty accurate. I feel honored. We just had Dave Filoni himself in the room,
dude,
filling
he's been
us
on the
in.
show.
We should make this. You should make this a segment on your podcast, like just a Dave Filoni segment, where it's like,
oh man,
Dave answers questions.
Dave calls in and complains about the show.
Hey guys, well, I mean, we have more than just Dave Filoni on the show right now. I've got the Grogu himself. sitting next to me on my desk. So I mean, that's pretty cool.
The
life size, yep, the life size sideshow replica, the child, and yeah, he's staring right at me, man. I have expect this thing to blink, you know. But
Man,
the detail's insane.
That's some quality product placement.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm quite happy with it. But anyway, gotta say it.
Cool.
I gotta say it. He's on the show too. He just can't hear him, you know. But yeah. So anyway, that's kind of filling you in very basically on kind of Ahsoka's journey a little bit. Does that help at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, so like I guess then my second question is too, because we get a big name drop near the end for Admiral Thrawn, who we have talked about before. So I guess it's a little more mysterious. But is there anything for you that you can fill in there? Because like I have like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're missing a lot of pieces.
Yeah. So,
well, I guess my first question.
Thrawn has a very deep history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
he does.
Before we dive into Thrawn, I want to ask though, so this lady, what's her name in this episode?
Oh, the magistrate person?
Yeah, the magistrate person.
Oh man, actually I didn't write that down. Can't even remember honestly.
Yeah,
but it
like,
doesn't actually really matter that
she-
much because what Ahsoka was talking about with Din Djarin, she alluded to some back history with the Clone Wars and this woman that never shows up in the show.
No.
That's just kind of her saying this happened in that time frame, but in the animated show you'll never see that character pop up.
This is a new character. This is the first time
Yeah.
we've seen her.
All right.
Yeah.
But is
Yeah.
she? Do we know if she's like Imperial Navy or something? I couldn't tell if she was just a
No idea.
civilian or something.
No idea. I think okay,
Right. So
so I'll get into this in a little bit. But the fact that she said, where is your master, you know, Grand Admiral Thrawn, it's worth noting that all the HK 87.
Yeah, there weren't
droids, I think it was.
47s because 47
47.
is technically several thousand years ago in the Old Republic. I noticed
Yeah.
that they canonized on screen the HK series, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they
yeah,
kind of
so-
made them like battle droids, but traditionally they were assassin droids.
Right, yeah, and yeah. So these are HK. I think they're 87 assassin droids or whatever. Yeah. So they have a tattoo on their head in this show, and it's been pointed out online and it's on the Wikipedia and whatever else that that logo is the 7th Fleet logo, which is Thrawn's fleet. So.
That's pretty
it's
cool.
to
I didn't
be-
notice
Right
that.
on.
I didn't notice it either until someone online pointed it out, and then when I saw it, when I watched it again, I was like, "Oh yeah, that is that yeah." So yeah, that and the capes that some of the other ones wear are very 7th Fleet Imperial style, and of course that is the 7th Fleet is Thrawn's fleet, and Thrawn's fleet became Thrawn's fleet about 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is Episode 4. And then the fleet was defeated in the finale of Star Wars Rebels Season 4, which, you know, again, spoilers, sorry guys. And Thrawn's flagship, the Chimera, was the one that jumped to hyperspace with Thrawn and Ezra inside it. And Ezra kind of caused that to happen. So
Who's
as
Ezra?
a way of... Ezra is the Jedi character in Star Wars Rebels who...
He's more or less the main character. He's like the Ahsoka of Rebels.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and he actually is just a street rat. He's very similar to like a Star Wars version of Aladdin.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
could sing a little bit of the song there.
yeah.
Take that, street rat.
Basically, Aladdin was like teleported away with Jafar when Jafar went full.
yeah, totally. He was cast back into the Cave of Wonders.
When Jafar went full genie, he's like, "All right, we're out of here."
Yeah. Well, what happened was, okay, if I had to try to explain the creatures that were involved, it's gonna sound stupid, but basically they were giant space whales, and they have the ability to like fly around space with their own natural hyperspace ability.
Yeah, they're
It's
like a
strange.
space creature that has hyperspace ability.
Yeah, and that's how. So so the idea of going into hyperspace comes from like a naturalistic animal thing to do, like an animal ability, I guess, and which is where people originated getting hyperspace technology. Maybe they harvest something from those creatures. I have no idea. I have no idea how it works. But whatever
every
the case
ship we
was,
see, it has the brain and the heart of a whale that they scavenge from space.
yeah, I know, right? It's stupid. Like, honestly, like, I love Dave Filoni. I love everything he does. That part was questionable, as well as the
he likes doing stuff like that, though, because well, I think Pablo explained that. That was just a means to get them as an excuse to get the Inquisitors across the map in time to make the story make sense.
Yeah.
I was gonna say though, there's also other animals that Dave has done similar things with, because like we find out later that these wolves have like force abilities, right?
I can buy that a little more. I mean, I think like going into hyperspace, like, well, that's the thing. Like, I think I can buy into the fact that maybe some of these whales can go like really fast through space or whatever. But I mean, they like glow and everything, and I don't know.
See, it makes sense.
Just like,
they glow.
It makes sense. I don't know how. Like, I guess did somebody see them do that and go like, "Hey, we need to build something that does exactly that," or like, you know, like I don't really understand like how the whole concept of hyperspace came from an animal. I can understand that an animal can do it. I don't understand how they harvest that technology.
Saw it and realized were able to figure out what they were doing and just saw it as something that they could achieve themselves somehow.
I guess so.
That.
Yeah, I guess so. But whatever the case is, so these whale things are wrapping themselves around Thrawn's ship, and Ezra's aboard. And anyway, they wrap themselves around basically the whole 7th Fleet. And then Ezra, being able to have this communication ability with these whales, it tells them to take off, and these whales just like take these ships into freaking out there kind of thing, and no one's seen them since. So that explains why this. Yeah, so that's why it explains like why Thrawn, Ezra aren't around for the original trilogy, and Ezra, being this Aladdin character, is found by another Jedi called Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus dies. And he trains Ezra to be a Jedi. And Kanan Jarrus is a real Jedi Padawan who escaped the Purge, very similar to Ahsoka Tano. He was the Padawan of Depa Billaba. And and he was the one who kind of took Ezra up under his wing and decided, hey, this kid has got potential, and you know, if I'm gonna play any part in getting the Jedi Order to move on and rebuild, like, I've got to train this kid to use his abilities to be a Jedi, right? So that's why Ezra becomes this Jedi figure in Star Wars.
I'm trying to remember, because it's been so long since I've watched Rebels. Does he at the start try to make an excuse not to train Ezra because Ezra's too old?
At first, he kind of
I feel like that's okay. So there's something along those lines, because it's really funny, because I'm noticing that every time we meet a new character who has force powers and they go to train it, it's always no, too old, too much attachment, no, too old to begin the training.
Yeah, like, totally.
Anakin, Luke, Ezra, spoilers, Grogu. Every time there's a new character, this seems to be a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that is kind of the Jedi way, and I think I'll actually get into that in a bit here, because I wrote that down as one of my notes. But as far as like catching up on Ahsoka, Thrawn, 7th Fleet, who Ezra is, does that kind of like fill it in for you a little bit there?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
All right, cool stuff. Basically, this episode is called The Jedi, and Ahsoka very clearly in Star Wars Rebels says, I am no Jedi. And at the end of the Clone Wars, she's no longer a Jedi. In the Clone Wars itself, she actually kind of leaves the Jedi Order. Yeah,
she like officially leaves the Order. Like,
yeah, so and she
the council, everything.
Yeah, and actually her lightsabers are a big statement to that. So in the novel Ahsoka, she creates those white lightsabers by purifying the kyber crystals of a Sith Inquisitor's lightsabers, and they're, you know, so they go from red to white kind of thing, and it's kind of a visual sort of parallel to her allegiance, because she isn't necessarily aligned with the Jedi, who are normally known for wielding like a colored lightsaber. nor is she a dark side user, which they would normally do red. Her allegiance is pretty much to the Force, to herself, and to just doing good things in the galaxy at this point. So it's a purified
arguably,
kind of look.
And ironically, what the Jedi probably were supposed to do in the first place. It sounds very Qui-Gon-esque.
Oh yeah,
well.
yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you brought that up because because Ahsoka Tano to me is kind of like the representative icon for being like the best form of it that a Jedi can be, and very similar to Qui-Gon, where they're not reliant on a code or anything like that. Like they literally rely on the will of the Force, and they don't get involved with war, and they're not all about power and politics, but they're all about helping people, kind of thing. And there was an arc in the final season of the Clone Wars where actually, Blake, you weren't really too much of a fan of this arc, from what I can remember. But
which one was it?
It was when Ahsoka goes off to help those two girls.
Two girls.
Yeah, there's two girls that she goes to help, and it takes up like 4 episodes of the season finale. But anyway, she's off. Ahsoka's off helping these two girls stay out of trouble, kind of thing. And I think a lot of people online were like, "Why do we have like this arc?" You know. But to Dave and Ashley Eckstein, like, you know, this character arc was very important because it actually explains why she does what she does and what she's doing beyond the Clone Wars once that whole thing is done, right? And she realizes that even though she's not a Jedi anymore, she can still use her powers to help people. So in a way, like in the Star Wars galaxy, she's kind of like a superhero, like a little bit, because like she's got all these powers and everything, and she goes out and helps people, but she's not exactly part of like any organization or whatever. Like she's not a part of the religion of the Jedi, right?
So this arc more or less was at the beginning she was really lost because she just left the Jedi and didn't know what to do, and then she kind of finds herself.
Yeah, exactly. And that explains kind of where she is in this current time, because even though she did help the rebellion when she could, and everything, and now there's also a reason in Star Wars Rebels as to why she's not in the movies, but at this point in time she's off, you know, doing her own thing, because, you know, rebellion's won, the Empire's gone, you know, she's still I think doing what she can to clear up any mess that the galaxy's still in. And so she's in this episode very clearly trying to help these townspeople overcome this oppressive, you know, place, but at the same time she's also on a mission to find Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is what we find out at the very end of the episode. It's a big name drop, but yeah, lots of cool stuff there to look forward to. So it's very likely that this moment in time is actually before the flash forward event that we see at the end of Star Wars Rebels in the finale there. So
so you're gonna say that you think this is before then?
I think so. I think it's before she shows up with the Gandalf white cloak and staff, you know, before she meets Sabine and goes off to find Ezra, because I think that is when she knows exactly where he is. And I think in the meantime she's been searching for the answer.
Well, the question then is, because I assume this must have been afterwards, because like she goes, finds Ezra, comes back, then, you know, Thrawn would have been back too. Now she's trying to hunt down Thrawn because she found out Thrawn actually survived. But I guess instead you changed around where I guess Thrawn was able to escape, and she caught word of him, is now trying to hunt him down, and then that'll help her find Ezra.
Yeah, I think she caught wind that Grand Admiral Thrawn is alive, and she knows if he's alive, then Ezra's probably alive. So at the very end of Star Wars Rebels, when she says to Sabine, like, she doesn't say anything. It's like Sabine actually has a voiceover that's going on in the background. And she says something along the lines of, okay, and now it's time to bring Ezra home. You know, it's not really clear as to when that moment takes place. I think on Wikipedia, they kind of estimate it at like 5 years after episode 6. But, you know, they don't actually say that in the show, so they could always change that, right?
And just for estimation, what's the time gap from episode 6 to the sequel trilogy? Like Force Awakens.
Oh, that's 30 years. That's like 29, 30 years. Yeah. Okay. So and this show takes place like 5 years after episode 6 as well. So this is all kind of happening around the same time frame, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that Ahsoka is on the hunt still. It makes me think if we're gonna get a spin-off show or if we're gonna get more episodes where she pops up in. It makes me think even more crazy things, like we're gonna get probably Admiral Thrawn, like in live action.
That's what I was thinking too.
Also, an Ezra Bridger. Like I never thought I would see the day that Ezra Bridger made it into a live action show, but
Dave's finally been given an opportunity, right? So cram in as many as you can.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like I was talking to Calvin about this, and I said to him, like, I think it's moving in the direction that Dave has. I mean, Dave is one of the two main guys making this show, right?
Yeah.
So like to anyone out there like who hasn't seen Dave's previous shows, it started off being very kind of independent, standalone feel-ish, but and here's where one of my speculations of season 2 has kind of come to fruition, is that I speculated season 2 would be the one to kind of bring the show into the fold a lot more, integrate it in its place in the timeline. And so far it's done a really good job of that, but it's even done more than I expected to, because what it's doing is it's using the past 2 animated shows as kind of like a reference list of things that needed to be continued. And
I can see that, because there was definitely storylines that were left like unfinished, essentially.
Oh yeah, and everyone's just like, when's the next animated show coming out? Like no one thought that the Mandalorian would be the one to kind of pull the pieces together and kind of allude to what these characters are doing now.
Yeah.
So I guess like having not seen Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff like that, it's a lot of stuff that I guess going forward into maybe even season 3. It's really going to be missing out a lot on. I
do wonder though if it's going to start getting like too big, because I think a lot of people like this show because it's simple. Like it's this guy who's got this kid. He's trying to figure out what to do. He's doing like bounty hunting missions and like saving villages and stuff. Right? It's very Firefly. But then the worry is it going to just become like the movies where it's too tied into everything going on, you know what I mean? So then it loses that small feel and just kind of gets lost in
I see where you're going
what we've
with
seen
that.
in every other show so far.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with that. That was actually a question that I wanted to ask you guys, because my thoughts on the matter are, I enjoy the first season for what it is, because it does a really good job at kind of introducing that kind of independent vibe, because we needed that time to appreciate and sort of start to love these new characters, right?
Yeah.
Like Carl Weathers' character and the Mandalorian and the Child, of course, and all these other new faces that we've seen and seen repetitively. As soon as a face like Ahsoka or Bo-Katan comes into the show, they naturally just steal the show, because like we've seen Bo-Katan, we've seen Ahsoka in animated form multiple times over multiple shows.
Yeah.
And now they're in live action, and that's like they just take all the attention with them, right? So
people already have such like ties to these characters, right?
Yeah, and we needed that first season to feel more independent on purpose, so that we could feel nostalgic towards those characters, maybe in the and remain attached to those characters when these other characters do show up, right? But I think it's very Star Wars to have it eventually come back and affect that bigger story, because it's always about that bigger narrative all the time.
So you want the story of Mandalorian to get bigger and bigger, and just
I think it's just naturally going to happen, and I'm not against it. It's not that I want it to happen. It's more like I understand why it's going to happen, because even though we have, like, if you think about it, like we have movies like Solo, like Rogue One, that are considered spin-off movies. They directly feed back into the main narrative, though, right? And then shows like Resistance, Rebels, Clone Wars, those all feed back into the main narrative again. So being the first live-action show, I think there was a lot of kind of speculation that this was just going to be its own thing. But I think it's very, very Star Wars to have that connection, that it was eventually going to go back to that main narrative again and kind of pull everything that show's done back into that story. So I think it's very natural that was eventually going to happen. I think. Okay.
What are your thoughts then of pulling in Thrawn at this point? Because they've already got this new Moff guy, right?
Yeah, Moff Gideon. Yeah.
So if they've got him, do they need him and Thrawn? Because technically, Moff is above the rank of a Grand Admiral, because like Tarkin was a Moff before he got promoted.
Yeah. You know, I think honestly,
Grand
I think Thrawn is a future setup. I think Moff Gideon is going to be dealt with by the end of this season.
Okay. But interestingly, though, because like it's also weird because the Empire is technically like falling apart. So Moff Gideon is technically more of like a warlord than a proper Moff, which I guess people would consider like a governor in American politics.
Yeah.
So because Grand Admiral Thrawn is below him in rank, but probably more competent of a like strategic kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It gets a little like you're not really moving up the chain of command, like you're moving backwards almost.
Right.
Like
technically
it's like a lesser bad if you go by rank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
I know what
killing Palpatine before killing Vader.
Well, I think Moff Gideon could also be the kind of character that eventually gives Thrawn even a run for his money, right? But it's also eligible to think that maybe they're in cahoots together, because those Dark Troopers thing, it's a very Thrawn thing to do.
That's what I was thinking too when I was watching him. Like I was thinking back when I mentioned Thrawn. I was thinking the possible Dark Troopers. It could be it's very Thrawn-esque.
It's a very Thrawn
thing.
Because
in the original novels, what Thrawn did was he found this decommissioned and lost fleet of Star Destroyers, which all had this special kind of like AI system programmed into them. So he could be in control of one ship, but control an entire fleet of Star Destroyers, which are all kind of like programmed together.
Like game pieces almost.
Essentially, yeah. So like they didn't have any actual people on board. You just controlled them remotely. And that's not a far step then to say in this canon that he would kind of go a similar route with these Dark Troopers. Because it's just like the soldier version, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I think it's a very Thrawn thing to do. Man, all right. Let's hold on. I got like a lot of things down for this episode. Okay, do you think I gotta have you guys answer this question, because I was kind of curious about this. The child, the kid is so obsessed with this ball, right? Do you think? I'll get Reed to answer first. Do you think that it's possible if he ever gets a lightsaber that it's gonna be made from a ball?
I don't think so. No.
That would be a first.
How would that even work? I mean, maybe he'll put the ball into it somehow.
That's the thing.
I don't think we're ever gonna see him get a lightsaber. Just throwing that one out there.
That's also
that's
true.
Fair. That's very true. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you go by their age, he'll make a lightsaber in like 300 years.
Yeah. Exactly. Also, we see in this town, we see a droid that walks by the Mandalorian that's straight out of Jabba's palace. So
I recognized him. He's got that really kind of tall Frankenstein head.
Yeah, and it just made me think, this show now has kind of brought to life, Clone Wars did it to the IG units, but they've never done it practically. But practically now they've had to, in live action style, had to create two droids back from the original trilogy that in the original trilogy we never saw walk around or move or anything like that. We just saw their face turn and their arms move. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now that's twice. Two droids now that they've had to like come up with a way that they walk and everything, because
which is awesome. Like, and honestly,
which is really cool.
They've done a really good job of like showing a lot of the original aliens and droids and stuff. And honestly, I feel like that's one of the biggest issues people have with the sequels.
Right.
They just ignored all of that.
Yeah, and that's one of my big issues too.
So I am loving Mandalorian for like all of the, I guess you could call it like
the references.
Or like fan, stuff. But
yeah,
to me, fan service. Thank you. But to me, it's actually just solidifying that this is in the same world.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's exactly how I would put it too. Like it's less about fan servicing and more just continuity.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. Totally.
So did you guys catch the fact that they finally canonized the fact that Beskar now blocks lightsabers.
Yeah, I noticed that right away.
I totally forgot. Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys about that because I don't think we had ever come up at all, like in any of the the first season or anything. And so I thought that was really cool that like Beskar could block it. Like I'm sure there's more. Like I'm kind of curious if there's like more to it. Like, have you guys seen that happen before, kind of?
I think this is the first time it's been officially canonized, but it used to be a thing in EU. So originally, there's only 2 types of metals in the entire galaxy that can stop lightsabers or blasters, like blasters be like properly, and that is cortosis and Beskar. So Beskar, I think it has. I believe it works is such a high melting point that it actually won't be affected by it, whereas cortosis actually disrupts the energy as it comes into contact.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's cool that they actually made that happen, and it came at such a sudden, movement when she came out and just struck him, and I was like, what? Like,
I know, right?
I was just blown away. I was like, okay, so that just happened.
I'm glad they did, because I think it wasn't that long ago. You and I were talking about this. Maybe it was on the air because we're wondering if they're actually going to make that a thing.
Well, exactly, yeah, and I think it came up when we were all doing the second or the first after show of this season. That back alluding back to the Clone Wars when all the Mandalorians show up and whether or not their armor was actually Beskar or not, and I'm pretty sure that Ahsoka has sliced open people's jetpacks in that show. I'm pretty sure it happened. So
in Clone Wars,
in Clone Wars,
I think that happens in Clone Wars a lot. I don't know if we've ever seen their armor, like anyone die from like a chest wound. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So it makes me wonder if perhaps maybe there is Mandalorian armor out there that isn't made of Beskar and
I would absolutely. Yeah. At least that's how it was in EU. Like proper Mandalorian Beskar armor is extremely rare, just because the metal is so rare, right? Most of the armor that is Beskar is extremely ancient from like the Mandalorian Wars kind of era, and because they can actually make a lot of it anymore, both because of skill and there was no availability to actually get the metal. They just started recreating it with just regular like Durasteel and Plastoid. So it was it looked the same, like had the same style, but it was not made of the same materials.
Okay, yeah. So that's maybe it'll come out at some point, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that they've now kind of confirmed. Some of the troops out there in the Mandalorian ranks don't all have Beskar armor. So
I guess because we're kind of on it, I want to point out that I thought it was really funny that the last season he just slowly accumulated his armor, and then this season he gets like his spear. So now he's like a full knight.
Yeah. Totally. Talking about his spear and how Josh was saying like he thinks he's gonna kill Grand Moff Gideon this season. I think he's gonna.
He can fight him now. Yeah,
that's true. That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think of that. I was just thinking, Moff Gideon. He's gonna maybe fight Ahsoka because she's gonna show up at some point, right?
I think he's replaced his boomstick with a pointy stick.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I actually never thought of that before. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. Yeah, that's.
It seems pretty likely to happen. It's too little. It is little too coincidental, I'd say.
Yeah.
But the question is, does he have any training? If not, who's going to train him?
Oh, the real question is like, is he going to reforge that spear into like a sword or something cool? Like. Not that spears aren't cool, but I would just love to see a Beskar sword.
Find a forge or whatever, right?
Yeah, the woman, because like, did she die in that purge when he escaped?
No. She was still reforging all that stuff. So
underground. He went down there and they found all the helmets and stuff, right? So they found the lair.
Yeah, and she was melting it all down and stuff like that. What do they call her again? The armorer, I think. Yeah, I think it was the armorer. But so she's out there still, so it's very likely we'll see her again, and maybe he'll get it factored into something cool. But anyway, that's a good idea. What do you guys think of the name Grogu?
Grogu.
I thought at first I thought they said Goku.
Goku, yeah, Grogu. Yeah.
Just
I was like Goku.
That's hilarious.
Kamehameha!
Yeah, exactly. Just going all Super Saiyan.
Yeah. What'd you guys think of the name?
I thought it was cool. I'm all for it, man.
I thought it was a little goofy until Reed actually pointed out that Yoda's kind of goofy. So I'm like, well, you can't really argue with that.
It's a good point to make.
Or
because I guess we're so used to like saying some of these names but they do sound weird, right? Like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
When you think about it, it's dude, that's a weird name. Like,
talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, I don't know if you guys have ever watched it, but there's these guys, I don't remember their names, but they make a bunch of like satire or like spoof, like short movies based off of a bunch of different things like Star Wars, Batman, and other stuff. So with what they do is they like redo it in like a thumb context to satire. So like Star Wars they call Thumb Wars, and Batman they call like Bat Thumb, and then Frankenstein they call like Franken Thumb.
Dude, those are so old.
They're so old, but
yeah, so I remember an advertisement for that in like '99.
Yeah, man. So with Thumb Wars or whatever, their name for Obi-Wan Kenobi is the greatest thing I've ever heard. It's like Ooby Dooby Scooby Dooby Banooby. it's so great.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. Like, speaking about goofy names, like they make fun of it so much. It's great.
Oh man, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't think I've ever. That name sounds really familiar, but I've never actually seen the thing. I don't think so. Yeah,
pretty great, man.
So they get into a little bit about Grogu's backstory, that he was actually trained at the Jedi Temple, and that kind of blew me away.
Yeah, I was so surprised by that. But then I kind of got thinking on it. It's like he is over 50 years old, so it makes sense then that he could have been at the temple.
Here's another interesting fact here, is that based on his age, there's people online that have kind of, very blatantly pointed out the fact that he is actually the same age that Anakin would be if he was still alive. So he was born the year that Anakin was born.
Interesting.
So interestingly enough, he probably came to the Jedi Temple around the same time. And it's worth noting that in the Phantom Menace, we have Yaddle and Yoda, which are both also part of the same species. Yeah, and Ahsoka doesn't remember Yaddle because Ahsoka was not even in the Jedi Temple.
I noticed that too, because she said I only knew one other of his species. I'm like, it was Yoda, and I was like, did she never meet Yaddle?
No, and there was it's funny. Ian, he was on the show, right? Our friend from England. So he tweeted out this as well, and I also tweeted something out. There was an article that I think it was Screen Rant or something that put it out there. Screen Rant has some pretty good articles, and then some of their articles are like, dude, why? Like nobody cares about this. So anyway, they put out an article with a subject header of fans outcry for Ahsoka's Ahsoka left out Yaddle or something like that. And I was like, I looked at it and he tweets this out and goes, haha, no, we're not. And I was like, dude, it's so true. I
did cross my mind. First time I watched it, she said that. It's actually the first thing I thought of was.
I did too. Reed, did you know there was another creature called Yaddle? Okay, cool. Okay, so Yaddle in the Phantom Menace, this is like Anakin's like 12, right? So Ahsoka is probably just being born around this point in time. Like she's probably like 2 or something like that. So I'm assuming that she's not even like in the temple at this point. It's fair enough to say Yaddle probably died after the Phantom Menace, very close to that movie though. but like after, so that we don't see her, because she's not in the later films. So she's not in Attack of the Clones and stuff like that. And when I was reading the old Scholastic Jedi Quest series back in the day, you know, when that was a thing. Yeah,
I just realized something.
She died in that series.
What if Yaddle and Yoda are the parents?
He violates everything he swore.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
That would be pretty crazy.
Blasphemy!
Exactly.
I would laugh pretty hard if that was the case.
Yoda, you became the very thing you swore to never become.
When 900 years old you reach, horny you will be.
Yes. Oh my god.
I can see Yoda like making a move on Yaddle, and like preserve the race. We must.
Red, luscious hair.
Higher duty we have.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's not out of the question. I mean, but I mean, I thought it was interesting that he was raised at the Jedi Temple, and that somebody took him, more or less specifically, somebody took him from the Jedi Temple, and he's still alive. Like, who would take somebody like that from the Jedi Temple and not like kill them? And I don't, you know
Kill
what I mean?
them.
Like,
I think he's no. Didn't you say a Jedi took him from the?
No, he said.
during the
She
purge,
said.
saved
She
him.
said somebody. She said somebody took him from the Jedi Temple after the purge or before the purge or what. Or it was something like that. It was like around the same time as the purge. She kind of alluded to the fact that
Do you
this
think
whole
he was
thing happened.
kidnapped? Because I thought it was a Jedi
I think-
like saved him during the purge.
Well, that's on the table too. So there's I've seen the theory online that Mace Windu survives and he's the one who took him.
Oh my god.
I've seen that theory and I'm like, you know what?
Why not?
It's not crazy. I mean, like, we've seen a lot of stuff at this point. Like, I never thought we'd see live action Ahsoka.
Nobody dies in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely.
They're only
it's
horribly
definitely possible.
mutilated, and they live to fight another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just come back
So-
with robot legs.
Well, I've seen a fan kind of concept image of what Mace Windu would look like after
I've
that.
seen that too.
It's kind of
It's
pretty trippy. Yeah, it's pretty trippy, but it's like super cyberpunky, and he's got this super. I don't know why, but he's got this super long like goatee thing. And anyway, but yeah,
I do want to point out.
Took him.
I do want to point out that Samuel L. Jackson asked George Lucas if he could live after he fell out the window, and George said, "Sure, why not?"
Maybe, yep.
So technically, he lived.
It's like, well, it makes me rethink Empire Strikes Back. It's like, that boy's our last hope. It's like, no, there is another. And he's like thinking about his son or something like that.
It wasn't even Leia.
The whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Oh man, dude, you gotta supercut that. Super like, so it just goes from like Yoda saying that, and then it'll cut to Grogu like, eh?
yeah. So I'm really thankful that we're hopefully not going to get any more of this Baby Yoda stuff, because the name was kind of driving me crazy. Like I don't know.
The child.
The child is totally fine. Like that's the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, like I mean, now we actually have, like, aside from the child, we have Grogu now, which is fine. But yeah, like the Baby Yoda thing was like, man, like, I cannot get on board with that. You know, I don't think Lucasfilm was a huge fan of it either. But
No, I don't think they were.
yeah, so Grogu has suppressed his memories, and I think it might just be a good excuse so that they can fill that in later, however they want.
Is it memories? I thought it was just he was like hiding his force powers.
That too, but
Yeah.
Ahsoka says his memories go dark.
Yeah.
After
Well, they say he
after
was
he's kidnapped.
scared. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're. I thought they meant like they're bad memories. Like it was scary.
It's
He has
possible
no
that
good
maybe
memories since the temple.
Yeah, and it's possible that maybe he just didn't share that stuff with her, but yeah, I mean, it's likely that maybe we'll get some more backstory going forward. which would be really cool. Like I would love to find out like who took him in the first place and why. I mean, you know, we know why the Emperor or why the Empire wants him.
Yeah.
For his blood and stuff like that, but we don't know initially why anybody would take him in the first place. This plot can't go back that far, otherwise they would have succeeded way earlier on, right? But yeah. Anyway, Ahsoka also references like Anakin when she's talking about, you know, training like the child and stuff like that, and she says like, I can't train him because he's too attached to you, right? Like he and he's like, well, why not? And, you know, she's like, well, I've seen what happens to the best of us when, you know, we have like when they have emotions and attachments, right? And she's talking about Anakin.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that that's not something she discovers in the Clone Wars. It's like, I think I mentioned this earlier, is that she actually finds that out in Star Wars Rebels when she actually fights Darth Vader. And she realizes who he is when she chops off a little piece of his helmet. And you see his eye poking out, and he says her name, and she instantly is just like, what? Like, up until that point, and up until that point, she kind of keeps telling herself.
But did she know about
got to be dead?
The attachment, though, right? I don't know if she ever found out that he was married.
No, she never found that out. But I think she also kind of knew. I think it's a bit like Obi-Wan, you know, like he kind of just turned a blind eye to it. But it's very obvious in the end of the show that he kind of knows that they definitely have feelings for each other. I don't think he knows that they've gone as far as to marry each other, but
right.
I think
from Obi-Wan's perspective, let's also not forget that he almost left the Order to marry, forget her
Satine,
name. Satine. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, it makes perfect sense that, and I'm glad that Dave put that in the script for the end of the finale because Obi-Wan, you know, in the Revenge of the Sith, he just kind of turns when he's looking at Padme, telling her that Anakin turned to the dark side and stuff, and he goes, Anakin is the father, isn't he? I'm so sorry, and then he just walks off. And it's like, well, that was dramatic. Like, yeah. but yeah, no, he knows. I think he actually does have a really good idea for the relationship that goes on between them. Like, you know, the details maybe a little less so, but I think he knows that Anakin loves her. So, yeah, there is that. But anyway, yeah. So we got into the HK-87 droids, Thrawn's fleet, all that stuff.
Okay, I had a question. Yeah. So, when Mando like walks up to the wall and is confronted by the gatekeeper people, and the soldier guy asks him like, "Are you part of the guild?" Or I think it was the woman. That raises the question: is he in the guild? Because I thought at this point he was no longer in the guild. So did he lie to them by like? Because he said last I checked, which could be like, it's very ambiguous. Because both him and Carl Weathers' character, I felt like they are no longer in the guild because they kind of like turned on them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think so. That could be one possibility. The other possibility is that at the end of season 1, Carl Weathers' character fixed up his reputation a bit and called off the bounty on him and the child. Yeah, that's also on the table. I'm not entirely sure, actually. I'm gonna have to look that up, but I think that's why he says like last time I checked.
Yeah. It's maybe he
I don't
know
even think
either.
He knows.
So,
yeah,
like,
I don't even think he knows because he hasn't really been doing that job anymore, right? Like he's kind of stopped being a bounty hunter and he's more kind of been on his own personal quest at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, but did you guys catch anything, before I kind of move on to the duel and stuff like that, did you guys catch anything throughout this episode that you want to bring up?
I don't know if you're planning on getting into it later, but I wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about what we thought about the appearance of Ahsoka in live action.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, yeah, first of all, to get into the music, and let me just put it on. I thought they did a really good job at bringing back her theme, which was like the first thing that I think I recognized as soon as she kind of had a more calm moment when she was talking to the magistrate. Do you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Hear the song? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is the song that kind of plays whenever she's around, and it plays in different variations through Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And it plays when she first becomes Anakin's apprentice. It plays in a more saddened version when she leaves the Order, and then it plays again when she's fighting in a more kind of action-y way. And then we heard another version of this in this particular episode. There was like a variation of it. So I really liked that they did that, and I love the visual aesthetic. Obviously it kind of missed the heart of that character being Ashley Eckstein. I'm still kind of bitter that they didn't cast her as the character.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they didn't. I don't know. I'm sure they tried to do a casting with her and then decided to go a different direction. I would be surprised if she didn't get a shot at it.
That's the thing. Like I think for her, because she posted about this back in March, she was actually surprised, I think, but also said, I have nothing to do with The Mandalorian, and I appreciate all the support and everything. And so I don't think she really fully knew that any of this was happening. So it kind of surprises me that Dave Filoni wouldn't just call her up and say, hey,
that's what I would have thought.
But I don't know. Like, what did you guys? Oh, and her like who is just short. Yeah, in Rebels they were longer. That's my that's my only complaint. Other than the casting, Rosario was awesome, but I just feel like the role deserves to be played by Ashley Eckstein at this point.
I did have a few issues with it, actually, because you pointed out the Leku thing, and you're right. That does make a really weird canon issue. Because last time we see her
longer.
Yeah, last time we see her is like all the way down her back, like almost to her butt, and now it's like to her shoulders. I was like, what?
Yeah, now it's at the length that we saw her in Clone Wars. It's at that length right now. Whereas Rebels, like, it's
she was
longer.
What, like 16?
Like around 16, 17. Yeah. So I mean, at this point in time, it should be even longer than Rebels at best, because that was 10 years prior.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a budget thing, unfortunately. But I wish they would have made it longer, because it would have been like a hassle to have her like wear head tails the entire that long, right? So I can see why they would do that, but I also felt like them being longer made her look more like elegant and like wizened with Jedi.
I thought
from
so
what we
too.
saw her as she got older, them being longer with her cloak and everything, she looked, like a wizened Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. It shows her age too as they get longer. That's the one thing that's always been apparent to me throughout the animated show, is that even in the Clone Wars, they lengthened them with her age, right?
Yeah.
So after season 3 or whatever, they're longer, and then in season 7 they're longer, and then in Rebels they're longer, and then in this show they're like back up here again. It's like, why? Yeah. So that. Her voice, it's just not Ahsoka, right? She looks like Ahsoka. She doesn't sound like Ahsoka.
I'd say she looked like Ahsoka, but she didn't really act like Ahsoka.
No, she didn't really. Yeah, she didn't have a lot of.
My next issue, because there's several points where I'm not sure the actress's name, but she looked like angry, aggressive during that duel, which didn't feel Ahsoka like. And some of her movements didn't really feel very Ahsoka either, I noticed.
Yeah, and mind you, it's a tough thing, right? Because of course, like we've been attuned with the whole animated version of that character.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to ask you, Reed. Like, what did you? Because this is your first. Is this your first time seeing this character, or have you seen her before? And so what is it like then, being on that side of the fence, seeing this character for the first time in live action, and then hearing us talk about these things?
I mean, like, right away seeing her, like, she, like, you can tell there's a lot of things, like, she's not a normal Jedi, basically. I mean, like, the lightsabers are pretty big, like, dead giveaway, kind of. I mean, like, she's got, like, 2 white lightsabers, like, we already talked about that a little bit already. Also, I thought they were kind of cool. It reminded me a little bit of Count Dooku, a little bit, because one of them was a kind of curvy lightsaber. But yeah, she, like, the way she fought, too, was very different, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it's, like, it's something that we've seen before, kind of, the way she fought, but it was like the opening sequence, at least, was like very sneaky, Like it's not something I like typically expect of a Jedi to be like skulking around like in the shadows and
very
stuff like that.
Batman-y, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that's kind of neither here nor there. But yeah, you know, like she's not an atypical Jedi because like she's alive for starters. Like she didn't get wrecked in the temple and stuff like that. So it's like I'm not like surprised that you know, there's certain things that aren't like consistent. And I mean, it like back to what you were talking about earlier with her kind of walking that like middle ground with similar to like Qui-Gon Jinn or something like that. It doesn't surprise me that she would be like more intense or angry or frustrated about certain things. Like,
I mean, at this point, she's seen a lot too, right? Like she saw the fall of the Jedi, the rise of the Empire, the fall of the Empire. Like, it's gonna give you some perspective, and then like being in touch with the Force and like feeling all that, right?
Mm-hmm. Compared to the last time that we saw her, I feel like her display of power in this episode was not pulled off very well.
Agreed.
I think like it's like how Reed put it, like the skulking around sort of thing. That didn't feel like Ahsoka Tano to me. Like
I mean, maybe she's changed though. Like if so much time has passed since we've last seen her, and like she's had to stay alive like the entire time, like the Empire.
Yeah,
you know,
I can see that if she's like in hiding from the Empire. I'm trying to. She might have similar tactics to what happened here in the novel that takes place. Like,
and the other thing is like I know that she has also been doing her best at, in both Star Wars Rebels and at the very end of the Clone Wars. She does her best not to kill people. Like she does her best to try and preserve their life and to either knock them out or whatever, right? Because like as I don't know, with it's ironic because Anakin just killed everybody.
Yeah.
And I think when I was doing Clone Wars talk with Diego, we chatted about this kind of extensively as to the contrast between Anakin and his own apprentice. But she is very kind of a very soft-hearted person, and even if someone's trying to kill her, she doesn't act out aggressively. And that's also something that I thought was weird in that fight, that she was very aggressive looking when she was fighting the magistrate. And I was like, I don't know if she would really
caught me. Yeah, that really stood out a lot to me. I didn't like that.
Because in Rebels, she fights with such grace and skill, and she doesn't make a single, like, she's not taken off guard by her emotion at all. And even though she's kind of snarling in this one and stuff, like
even when she's fighting Vader,
in Vader she does get slightly emotional, but when she's fighting like the Inquisitors, for example, like she's just so collected, and she's fighting two of them at once, and like just so calm, and that kind of explained the whole like samurai kind of thing about her, right? And now she's like, she is got that samurai feel still, but then when she fights with this person, it's like man, like that was aggressive, like I don't know. And then and she was killing some of the guys, and some of them she didn't, and I feel like it was almost as if the performer and the direction and stuff, it all just it wasn't cohesive necessarily.
I'd be surprised if the woman who played Ahsoka in this, if she's actually seen the show.
She's actually a big fan of the character, yeah. So I'd like to know how many times she's seen the show. And not like I've seen a couple episodes and I'm a huge fan of the character sort of thing.
Yeah, but I feel like this comes up a lot with actors and actresses. They will, because they're given the part, they're going to look into it. But the Clone Wars is very long, and then Rebels and everything. If you want to watch everything, like to get to know Ahsoka, that's a lot of information. So unless she was already a big fan before she got the part, which most actors and actresses, that's not really the case. They'll like research a bit, like, yeah, it's great, but it's like more of just I have a contract, and then I need to, get the fans into this.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it was before her casting that she did express interest online, I think, because people pointed out that she had this look about her that looked like Ahsoka. So in a way, this is kind of a dream come true for all the people that were fan casting out there. But for me, I'm like it just missed the heart and soul of Ahsoka for me. Like, because the heart and soul of Ahsoka for me is definitely in Ashley's voice, and it's because when they're acting, they can't see what they're doing. Like, everything about that character and that performance has to come out through their voice, right? So whether that be when they're fighting or when they're being serious or whatever, that has to come out audibly. And throughout this whole episode, that just didn't vibe at all for me, like not once. So I was like, they should have at least dubbed the character, like, but no. So honestly, like, I hate to put it this way. That's a tough thing to do. I'm torn because, like, I obviously I was stoked to hear that this character was showing up. When I heard that Rosario Dawson was being casted, I was like, okay, she's a great actress. Do I think she should be playing this character? Like, no way. Like, you know, I think, like, Ashley Eckstein has to be the person to play this character, like, always. Like, she's the one who's responsible for taking majority of fans out there who hated the character and changing their minds about her. Which
was, at the beginning, anyone who'd seen Star Wars before. No one was a fan when the show first came out. I remember I was really excited when I saw the animated movie for sale at Walmart, because I never went to it in theaters. I was like, oh, there's a new Star Wars, cool, I'll check it out. And I put the DVD player, watched it. I got to the end, I'm like, wow, this is awful. I remember the thing that annoyed me so much was that now Anakin has an apprentice and it doesn't make any sense, and there's this like annoying snippy like preteen girl. I was so annoyed.
No, I was pretty peeved too, and I didn't want to admit it at the time, but you know, when we walked out of the movie theater, I think Diego was actually with me when we saw the movie the first time, and he hated it. He was like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I was like, how can you say that? Like, I didn't want to admit it, but I was pretty bummed. And I didn't even know that there was a show that was going to follow that movie. And then Luke had pointed out to me that they were launching the Clone Wars show afterwards, and I was totally out of the loop, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that, and you know, and then I tuned into CTV for the first couple weeks it was on, and then it became a Cartoon Network exclusive, so I couldn't watch it after that for a good long while, but yeah, I managed to buy the season on iTunes and stayed up with it, you know, after that, but yeah, I mean, this character goes back pretty far with fans, and has gone through the ringer as far as being this character that people used to hate and now they love, and that's all due to Ashley Eckstein, because without her performance and, like, you know, the collaboration between her and Dave, like, you know, that character could have just remained to be hated, right? Like, but that changed, and they did that with the aging and the development of that character's arc. And so to have somebody else come in and play that character, it's like somebody else just coming in and playing like just Luke Skywalker for a day. And it's like, you can't do that. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me, you know?
No, it's a good point. Like, it was a really high bar to achieve. So
it really is.
There are a few people, probably one person who could have actually like reached that.
Well, and here's the thing, like with characters, like, it is a very high bar, and it's a very difficult thing to achieve, because of course other characters, the argument can be made, it's like, oh, the voice is different than the actor on live action. Like, I mean, we have a different voice actor for Anakin as we do for our live action actors, and not to mention we've had multiple actors play that character. And then same with Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've got a voice for him in the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and then we've got, you know, Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness playing him in live action. So, like, there is, like, a separation there sometimes. But so far in the show, like, Katie Sackhoff has played the voice of Bo-Katan. She plays Bo-Katan in live action, you know, like, and so on and so forth. Like, we've had that with a few things. And Ahsoka's one of those first characters that it's like, whoa, okay, we only know this character from animation. Like, how are we going to translate that into live action, and who's going to play her, kind of thing. And Ashley has done live action in the past, but, like, I don't know if they were just fully I don't know if they just expected her to maybe not do a good job, or if they were just wanting an experienced actress that was able to just know what to expect, and who was also a fan of the show and the character and everything. Like, I have no idea. But
yeah, it's tough because like things like this, it's like I'm sure Dave would have wanted that, but Dave's not the only guy involved, so they'd have to go through probably most of the high end production team would make a call on something like that, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. But I don't know, it's a little disappointing. But I guess that brings me to my final kind of note of the evening, I guess, is that the rumor has it that there is going to be actually, I have one more point after that, but the rumor has it there's going to be a live action Ahsoka show. So how do you guys, well, I mean, how do you guys both, take that kind of news, and, like, excited, not excited?
Well, I had comparatively very little about this person.
Right.
So for me, like right now, based off of what I just watched from Mandalorian, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, that'd be cool to get. Like, I think it depends on, like, to me, it would depend on the time frame, because I haven't watched Clone Wars at all, so I don't really have any like expectations.
Right.
Really, for the character or her story and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh, cool. It'd be cool to see like if they do sort of an offshoot story, if it's like going to be in pursuit of Admiral Thrawn and stuff like that, that would be kind of cool. Where like she and Thrawn are kind of the focal point of that story, or like if it's going to be like a history of what's happened so far up until this point.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Blake?
I do kind of agree with what Reed said there, where it does depend a lot on what they want to do with Ahsoka and like what the actual storyline is going to be and the time frame that they're going to use. It would have to grow on me. They'd have to impress me at this point, though. Going just based off what we saw today, like I could see that it could get better, but I do think, and this is based off one episode, so I mean, it could be that maybe just didn't work out as well as they wanted to in this one shooting. But I do think, what was the name of the actress?
Rosario Dawson.
I do think that Miss Dawson will need to get to know the character a little bit better and the history if this is the route they're going to go.
Yeah.
Is that to me, that felt like there was a disconnect.
Yeah, I felt that too. Honestly, if we do get another show, preferably I just want them to go back to animation. But if they do insist on a live action Ahsoka show, then yeah, I think like I'm with you there. Like I think they need to really study up on how they can improve upon this live action portrayal, and perhaps kind of take another look at her headpiece and the way that I guess Miss Dawson is doing the voice and doing the in general, just the performance, just that it lines up a little better with, I guess, how we've seen the character before. But yeah, I don't know what it is exactly. It's not like I can pinpoint it for sure. It's just in general, I felt a disconnect, like between.
Yeah, it felt like
character.
A different person.
Yeah, I did, and unlike Bo-Katan at all, which of course we've seen in animation before, she felt identical, and it's because Katie Sackhoff has played that character in animation. In her head, she kind of has this idea as to like what this character is like in live action. She's had to portray that through her voice. She then watches the show, sees how that comes out on animation. She's perfectly capable of like just putting on the costume, being that person, because she's inside, like she's been that person, right? So I think like, and then her watching the show, it's like looking in a mirror as to like how her voice has affected the character's movements and what they do. And plus she wears a helmet, so she's got a bit of an easier way of like getting around the little minor things. But yeah, it's a daunting task for sure. I just think they need to be very careful about how they move forward with that. But Yeah.
So I guess you probably could wrap up soon. So I did want to ask briefly. So do you think that Grogu is going to get trained, or are they going to say that he's been too tainted?
I think he's gonna get trained, or like I don't know. To me, it depends whether they want Grogu to be the focal point of the story, or like the darks. Like it depends, like what the main story arc they kind of want to do. Like I don't know how many seasons they're planning in Mandalorian, stuff like that. Because I mean, Grogu, I don't think we're gonna see the kind of development from Grogu that we can see with the Mandalorian, right? Because Grogu's takes forever
ages
to
too
age.
slow. That's the thing. So it's like if they find a master for him, then he's probably just going to be like out of the show.
Yeah.
Or they'll have this new Jedi character that's going to be with Mandalorian everywhere he goes.
Okay, here's my theory. It might sound crazy, but after all what we've seen so far, maybe it's not. So at the very end, by the way, the whole Western gunslinging fight in the alleyway on the other side of the fence from the samurai sword fight, super cool. Like I love that.
Yeah.
I thought that was like two iconic, like very Star Warsy things at the same time. Western, samurai, right? Like
it's pretty
perfect.
Cool. One guy is like super greasy. And has a blaster shotgun, which is now canon. It's been.
I just had to throw that out there. I just had to throw that out there. But anyway, so do I think that the child is going to get trained? I think it's very likely that we're going to see something happen there. But it's worth mentioning at the very end. I don't know if you guys caught it, but so far we haven't brought it up. She told Din Djarin and the child to go to Tython.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, she said to go there.
Yeah, so Reed, did you end up playing any of the old KOTOR games or
Nope.
Or no? Okay. So Tython is like this planet known to be kind of one of the first that hosted the Jedi Temple, or at least one of the main Jedi temples. And I think was it in do you remember, Blake? Which like was it the only one or something at one point?
I don't recognize it from the KOTOR game, so it might be from the Tor MMO. I could be wrong though.
Yeah. So, it's basically in the I don't know. I think it was in the deep core of space. I guess it says online, but anyway. So it was known as it's definitely one of the first Jedi temples that have been out there, and I believe it was. I forget which game it came out of. It's definitely from the Old Republic. It's been in that because I think that's where you start as your Jedi character when you make your Jedi character. But in canon, like they haven't really done a whole lot with it at all. But in the meantime, it did show up in a couple books here and there, and the Old Republic game itself. So it's really cool that they finally.
It looks like it showed up in the comics at some point as well.
Yeah, in the comics too. Yeah, there's a lot of history about Tython, but also when the Jedi Order was called the JEDAII, the Jedi Order. So
it was. I guess the first time we really would have seen it was the Tor game, not KOTOR, but Tor.
Okay, all right.
Which is why I didn't recognize it because I never actually played the MMO. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So she's told them to go there and put Grogu on the stone and see what he does, and if he chooses whatever path he chooses is gonna, if he calls the Jedi or whatever from this place, like she said, a Jedi will come looking for him, right? So that could only be one of very few options. Now that we've already seen Ahsoka and she's not going to train him, that could either be Luke Skywalker, it could either be Ezra Bridger. Or it could be who else? Cal Kestis, if he's still alive from Jedi Fallen Order. But
that would be really cool.
That would be super cool because that actor has he does live action, like he plays the Joker character on Gotham series. But yeah, that would be pretty sick. But then I would wonder how he's survived this whole time. We're gonna have to wait until we get the 2 game sequels to Fallen Order to get that answer probably. But I don't know, that's a possibility, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Can you guys think of anyone else that would be alive? See, I think this is the most likely outcome, is that Luke Skywalker is going to show up, take this kid away, and his fate is going to be just to die at the hands of Kylo Ren.
Gosh. Oh, please, no. No.
Just goes from one Jedi to a massacre to another.
You can't escape the second purge.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Either that or he becomes a Knight of Ren. It'll be the short one.
Yeah, we just don't notice in all of Rise of Skywalker. There's just this little black shape in the back.
The blob.
Little blob crawling around on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about. I was like, okay, if Luke does come to collect the child, first of all, that's gonna be super cool because we're gonna see probably the digital Luke Skywalker that they did for the Rise of Skywalker flashback.
Unless they recast.
He looked really good in that CG face thing. Unless they recast, which would be a crying shame, seeing as they have that asset to use. But and Mark Hamill's still alive to do the voice, right? But yeah, I mean, if he shows up, I think that honestly is probably the most likely outcome, because there aren't any Jedi left. Unless they start bringing up all these new Jedi that we've never heard of before and start making stories for them too.
Well, that's basically what they've been doing so far.
Yeah. Well, as far as the Ahsoka storyline goes, it's been pieced together here and there. It's still getting built up.
Because let's not forget, before all the Jedi were purged, or completely wiped out, Yoda and Obi-Wan reversed the recording or the coordinate thing to tell people to not go back to the temple. So.
Right.
There could be more.
Yeah, there could be more out there that definitely also survived, maybe the Inquisitors era as well. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for coming back on the show, and I guess we'll catch you next week. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in to the show. And of course, it's always great to hear from you guys, which we've been getting a little more email in lately. So thanks so much to everyone, you know who you are, for sending in some mail to our email address at theescapepod@outlook.com. You can also follow the daily tweets at our Twitter, which is at SWEscape Podcast, also in the description below. And it's just great to hear you guys' fan theories out there, listener theories, I guess. We've got our own fan theories that we're kind of speculating on, of course, which you get to listen to on a weekly basis. So, tune in next week for our next after show, which will take care of episode 6 of season 2. And if more of you guys have any questions, comments, or theories of any kind, we'd love to hear about them. So feel free to send them through. And of course, if you want to join our Discord profile, that's got a link on our Twitter profile page, or you can just Google it up and hopefully find it. But we're on every single platform out there, so if you do have the ability to give us a 5-star rating, that would be absolutely fantastic, and it's pretty much the only way to help this show out in any way whatsoever other than recommending it to a friend, which would also be just fantastic. So, that's pretty much it for now. If you guys want to look up more of Ahsoka's story, you're welcome to, but the first thing I recommend is to just watch Star Wars The Clone Wars. Other than that, we'll catch you next time on Star Wars Escape Pod. May the Force be with you.